There's a pole at the end of your block, or maybe at the intersection near your block, or
This pole is far worse than any flock camera. Okay, let's find out about this. Like and subscribe.
2 streets over, or whatever, you get the point. And you've driven past this thing like 1,000 times without actually thinking about it. The little camera box on the side has been bolted up there since long before you ever started actually noticing. And as far as anyone bothered to tell you, it reads license plates, and that was supposed to be the total sum of what its actual job was. But 12 months ago, the Italian company that actually built that pole and sold it to your city, a defense contractor that goes by the name of Leonardo,
Cameras everywhere.
got a U.S. patent on a software upgrade that runs on that existing hardware. So the plate reader doesn't actually have to be replaced, but the new product just runs on it by default. Now, I'm talking about a Leonardo pole specifically. Leonardo sells these things to American police under a license plate reader brand that they call LSAG. But they've been doing that for like 20 years, okay? So flock cameras are a completely different vendor with their own product. That's not what we're talking about here. Vigilant is a third one, like aside from Flock and Leonardo. And,
Flock Camera is just a company that makes these cameras that are everywhere in the United States.
and there are dozens of other license plate reader makers that are operating across the country on top of that. So many that I could not make a video about all of them if I wanted to. So the total American plate reader market is absolutely massive. Companies are all...
And with all this technology, all these license plate readers, they can't stop migrants. They can't stop illegals despite all this spying. Isn't that, what's its purpose then?
clamoring at the same time, drooling for government money. And that's the same money that was taken forcibly from you under threat of imprisonment by default, and your employer just, caves because that's what it is, in taxes to pay for your own surveillance. Now, that 4,000 camera mesh network that basically exists with Leonardo is just their footprint under the LSAG brand. Every one of those poles can take the new product without any new hardware going up, so it's not that complicated to make these things like a version 2. Like if any of you ever played Fallout New Vegas, when you get to the end and you upgrade all of the robots and they're infinitely more powerful now. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Sorry for the non-gamers for the crappy analogy, but that's what it is. It's like your phone, right?
Yes, so they're updating these, but I get the feeling that one of the latest updates is more problematic than the others, but let's find out.
Phone running a software update overnight. So, for example, one competitor alone, Flock, runs past 100,000 cameras and scans more than 20 billion plates a month. Run the actual math behind
20 billion plates a month.
that, and that's every driver in America read or seen or photographed about 3 times a day. And that's every day just to log something like license plates. Of course, we know it's not really just license plates. It's a whole cornucopia of things. It's details of the car, color of the car, some cases how fast you're going, because they can correlate that between cameras to see how fast you're going, who's in the car. All those different things are a factor. But I'm saying, like, the argument is the whole, it's just to see your license plate nonsense. Now, Signal Trace is the Leonardo bolting a whole new set of eyes or abilities onto that machine that already exists. And they fingerprint everything, basically. The new product, which is Signal Trace, is like tantamount to tomorrow morning, if you were to sit at that red light again, at the corner where that pole is mounted and has been, the phone in your pocket is constantly probing every Wi-Fi network that's actually in range, a few times every second. And Like, that's just how the technology works. Your smartwatch is also
Unless you have it on airplane mode.
gossiping with that phone over Bluetooth low energy, and so are the earbuds in your ears. So every couple of minutes, other things also transpire while you're in your car, like the tire pressure sensors in your wheels sending out a radio chirp to your car's computer. And the contactless card
Depends on your car, whether you have this happening. More modern, recent cars, more likely to have it.
in your wallet, the transit pass, the work badge that you have, perhaps the anti-theft tags that you forgot to cut off the jacket that you have, the key finder.
Signal Trace captures the unique signals emitted from each device and creates a digital fingerprint for devices that routinely travel together. Yeah, so if you have a phone and something else, another device, your watch, let's say, and they're always traveling together, then that's a digital fingerprint. Oh, that's one person.
That's hanging on your kid's backpack as you bring them to school. Like, every one of those things is broadcasting an identifier in the clear, and that pole on the corner is now listening, logging, and recording all of it, or will be soon. Signal Trace mixes these signals,
What was that last little thing?
or will be soon.
Their headlines call it covert and say it gathers intel. This is sold to police as hidden surveillance, stated plainly by Leonardo. Yep.
Signal Trace mixes these signals into one single electronic fingerprint and then ties that fingerprint to your car and stores it permanently in a database. And it makes it so that any point in time, anyone else who has access to said database can query that super unique fingerprint forever. And they no longer actually just need your license plate to do it. They just need your...
That means if you drive a different car, but you still have your watch and your phone, that digital fingerprint is still there, they can still track you. So now they can track you, the person, across multiple different vehicles over years because of this digital fingerprint.
your fingerprint to pass again, to get a ding off of you, right? Like, you could wear a mask and be completely covered up from head to toe, and it wouldn't matter if you had your phone or at least some of those identifying things that you would have. And the word fingerprint here is an actual literal use of the word, because that signature is really unique to you in the same way that the print on the tip of your finger is also unique to you. It's persistent across things like time and tied specifically to just one individual, and that's you, right? So researchers actually settled this question more than a decade ago. This was with a 2013 paper out of MIT and a university that was in Belgium that I don't know how to pronounce the name of, so I'm not going to try. They basically pulled 15 months of phone location data from 1.5 million people and then used that to run some math. And
Though, to be fair, you can already get a lot of this data from just cell phone tracking. You know, you've seen the maps, like they can track you completely by your cell phone if you have it always on where you are, what at any point in time, just from the geolocation on your phone.
basically the results were that just 4 time in place points per person were enough to uniquely identify like 95% of the people that were actually in that data set. So that's really all it takes. 4 data points per human being. Now, keep in mind, Signal Trace grabs dozens of these per device, per car, every time you pass one of these sensors. So what that means is one stop at one light over-identifies you by like a factor of 10. And there's another pole potentially waiting on the next corner. Now, I've talked about this on this channel before, and I want to talk about it again, but there's a man who ran the actual agency that does this.
Using this data, you could identify every illegal in the country and remove them if you wanted to.
For a living, and his name's General Michael Hayden. and he was the director of the NSA and then the CIA. And he said way back in 2014 in a debate at Johns Hopkins on camera in front of an audience that we kill people based on metadata. And again, I know I really harp on that quote on this channel, but I think it's a very telling one. You know, I see people all the time telling me stuff about how it's not a big deal. The proof of that is the fact that
That means if looking at Afghanistan, if there's one phone that goes to this location where the CIA believes that there's Al-Qaeda people or they're terrorists, and goes to another location where there's believed to be, possible terrorists, then we identify that phone as a terrorist, and whoever's carrying it, we don't even know who it is, what they've said on it, the phone, but we'll send a drone into that person just based on where that phone is gone.
the NSA and CIA head, the guy who ran it,
Or who that phone has contacted. Like, we're monitored that phone calls a different phone that belongs to terrorists, and so now we don't know what the call was said. There's no decryption, like he said, but we'll kill someone based on that.
that metadata alone is enough to authorize things like a Hellfire missile strike. So kind of important, kind of has some relevance. And at the end of the day, I know a ton of security analysts who would much rather have metadata over the actual context of whatever message it is that you're encrypting, which is always the other talking point that people have. Leonardo.
Another point of this is they can definitely 100% for certain figure out everyone that was involved in Charlie Kirk's assassination if there were other people using all this data.
And wants you to believe that the fingerprint that they built out on you is completely harmless because they claim they never look at the contents of the signals. Well, okay then.
Why would you spend the money to collect it and to store it if you're not going to use it?
Right? I mean, I guess we're all good. There's nothing else to see here. We can just move on. We don't have to worry at all about it because, hey, they pinky promised that they wouldn't look at the actual info. It is insane that they are like they really believe that people will buy this nonsense. It's just a complete gaslighting. It completely, totally, 100% depends on you blindly trusting these freaks who want to monitor you. It's like, I have 100K right here, and I'm going to trust that this crack addict that I just met on the street that I invited into my house, he won't rob me. Like, that's really what it is. You're blindly trusting a stranger. Nothing about the fingerprint is temporary. Nothing, right? Leonardo has never published any kind of public data retention policy for Signal Trace. The product sheet that they have actually describes it as archived for future queries and analysis. Like, does that sound like someone that's going to delete it soon? Like, if they're saying we're going to archive it later to go through, like, no, it's 100% corporate phraseology for we keep it forever. So the fingerprint that they actually capture off your car,
Federal agencies can query the same database directly.
and all the devices that we talked about will still be queryable a decade or 2 decades or 50 decades from now when you're long dead. Like, to me, that's forever, right? So, like, by that logic, there's a case that exists in the state, and this cop is going to look up your data in the future and be able to see everything that you had, every device you had with you, what the signals were, how strong they were, right? All this different analytical data and that exists about you and your devices, and that's totally cool. And of course, they wouldn't use that, right? Like, they wouldn't use that ability to gather information for purposes like, I don't know, breaking into those devices, or like that would, no other consequences would possibly exist for that. But
I use nothing but my phone, so my digital fingerprint is rather light.
it's just insane. Like, the dragnet that
And if they can track my phone, that's they can track my phone. They can already get me that way.
has been built over the course of all these years is not built to forget anything. And we've watched this consistently get worse over the years. And there's no real economic break that they have for not keeping it for forever, right? Like a fingerprint is like a few, kilobytes? So storing one from like your car with all your information on it.
Yeah, it might only be a tiny bit, but the scale of number of these fingerprints that they get every day times years, it probably takes a significant amount of money to store all this. So that is the one constraint.
And all your devices for a century really cost less than a single squad car. And when hoarding is kind of that cheap, then
255 terabytes per year. That's a lot of hard drives still.
Nobody is going to bother doing things like actually deleting it. And the patent itself is really shameless about what they actually want.
And also, just one copy isn't enough. If you're going to actually have queries on this, it's like if you have all these different national security branches of the government all making queries to a database. If you only have one hard drive with everything, again, that one hard drive would fail. So they probably need hundreds. You probably need 100 to have 100 copies of all this data to do all the querying. And that you're talking significant infrastructure. It's a hefty bill. Not that much in context of how much the United States government wastes on all types of things, but it's not free to keep this data forever.
Lists basically everything. Like that. If I was just going to give you the synopsis, that's kind of what it would be.
Deletion is more expensive than keeping it? I disagree. You need to. Hard drives don't last forever. You need new hard drives every once in a while, if nothing else. And I think what they mean here is going through and deleting specific ones might be more expensive. I don't know. Maybe they'll explain it.
But like, anything that emits a signal, it grabs. It's, stuff like classic Bluetooth, obviously, but Bluetooth low energy, Wi-Fi probe requests, RFID frequencies on every band that the FCC actually allows for, near field communications, MAC addresses, UUIDs, manufacturer codes. It's a gluttonous pig, to say the least, kind of like your average politician with your tax money, right? We could just put it like that. Leonardo says that the product respects your privacy because they don't decrypt the contents of the signals that they grab, and they only grab metadata, right?
They don't decrypt it because then that would be impossible. Because it wouldn't be a small amount of data anymore they'd be collecting. It'd be a massive amount. And it would take a massive amount of processing to decrypt it. It just wouldn't be feasible. I mean, there's so much junk information out there. If it just wouldn't be efficient to try to decrypt all these different signals.
Which, even if that's true, we don't decrypt any. Okay, cool. Like, well, for how long? There's a whole saying of capture now, decrypt later, right? They always started off with something that isn't insanely invasive. So it's like, well, we're not actually grabbing the data that's flowing through the air when, for your communications. Okay, well, you're grabbing everything else. And what would it take for you to do that next step? Another software update is the answer, essentially. So it's just the same garbage excuse that's used over and over again. Like the NSA used the exact same thing to justify bulk spying, right up until the Supreme Court said in Carpenter v. United States in 2018 that it was only an excuse. And the court held that things like historical location data from your phone carrier requires stuff like a Fourth Amendment warrant. And that's something like, records actually showing everywhere your phone has been, because obviously your phone talks to cell towers. Now, Chief Justice Roberts put a cute little footnote that explicitly left untouched real-time data collection and location data from things like tower dumps and other, quote, other business records that might incidentally reveal location information out of it.
Yeah.
So every limit on state power comes with a note from the state, which is written for itself. Like, people talk about, I see all the time, people like, oh, well, the Supreme Court's going to not allow this. Like, the job of the Supreme Court is to rubber stamp things for the state. It's state apparatus that green lights.
Yeah, that's one way it functions. It also has to sort of respect the will of the people to maintain its legitimacy. So it's a balancing between those two.
The legality of things that the state does. And it's like, well, they don't always green light. Sometimes they do not. Yeah, sometimes they do. Otherwise, the deception would be incredibly obvious. I'd be very interested to know, like, what stocks Chief Roberts actually held at the time. That footnote is the exact thing, coincidentally, that Leonardo capitalizes on to actually make this all seem okay. It means that they don't need to do things like subpoena your carrier. They can just plant their spy sensors, different places in your city, on a public road that you pay for, and, let your devices broadcast at them. And then they pull your location data as well as, a cornucopia of other information.
I think they can only do this as part of law enforcement. Anyone like me, I can't just go set up monitoring devices on my own. It has to be part of the state apparatus.
From that, and that's it, right? And the cop no longer needs a judge's signature in order to be able to do that. They pull all the same location data off the pole on the street, and he needs nothing at all, and arguably way more information. Now, the Fourth Amendment guards the back door to your life while the front door stands completely open. And all of this stuff is premeditated, right? Like, none of this is, by accident or incidental. That's an important word, incidental, which is what they like to use.
There is a corrupt group of elites that would love to institute a type of Orwellian control system in the West. You saw this with how they pushed vaccine IDs, for example. It'll fail, but they're trying.
It's the equivalent of stretching a net across a whole river and hauling in every fish that swims past, and then turning around and trying to say that catching those fish, each one that got caught in that net, was accidental, right? Like the net didn't catch any of them by chance. Catching everything is the entire reason that the net was crafted in the first place and then stretched across the river. A concurrence is essentially just like a side opinion where a judge agrees with the outcome, but separately writes to add in like their own commentary. The whole of a person's movements over the course of a month is not actually exposed to the public because the likelihood a stranger would observe all of those movements is not remote, it's nil. A private investigator runs $75, let's say $100 an hour. I don't actually know what it costs, just a figure. That's one person, right? And you have him tail another person, and he follows them around. Signal Trace tails everyone who drives
After this video, navigating nowhere.
past it all day, every day, forever, for the price of electricity to keep the box warm. Really only ever held because surveillance was expensive or more expensive at that time. If you drop the actual cost down to zero and every protection that actually leaned on that expense falls with it. So one stranger watching one corner is just a person. And that would make sense. 100,000 of them on every corner is a mesh network. And nobody has actually litigated the mesh yet, right? What we're seeing is cops and law enforcement are not waiting around for somebody to try to litigate that. They're capitalizing on it and grabbing as much information about you.
But they're not using this to go after illegals or something that the American people actually want.
They can, as fast as they can. Now, the man who ran the company, or the parent company, that is to say. Over all of this, his name is William J. Lynn III, and he held the CEO chair at Leonardo DRS from 2012 to 2024. Now, right before he took that job, Lynn was Obama's Deputy Secretary of Defense, which is essentially the number 2 civilian inside the Pentagon. And he did this for 2 years. And right before that, he actually ran the Pentagon, and he was Raytheon's principal registered lobbyist to that exact same Pentagon for the 6 years right before that. Now, Obama had signed an executive order 3 years before Lynn's nomination, saying that nobody could come straight from the defense industry lobbying into the Pentagon appointment. Well, how'd it happen then, right? Well, how it happened was...
Well, there's a revolving door and a lot of corruption. Surprise, surprise.
They roll in a special ethics waiver and put him in anyway. So, do you see how this works? Like, they get these ethics waivers, and they can do whatever the hell they want. Well, we get fed off of, and 40% of our income gets forcibly taken by the government, and then taxed again when you go to spend the, pittance that you have left, when you go buy an overpriced gallon of gas. You can't make this up. It's absolute insanity. And all of the tax funds, your surveillance. So Senator Chuck Grassley stood up on the Senate floor and said that the Office of Government Ethics would need a, quote, a full-time department just to handle Mr. Lynn's conflict of interest regarding Raytheon's waivers. So the government running its own ethics office, essentially it turns out just about as well as you would think it actually would. The waiver went through, and Lynn ended up serving his 2 years at the Pentagon, then walked back into the defense industry the very day his cooling off period expired. And what he ended up doing was taking the keys for Leonardo DRS. And that same Lynn closed the 2022 merger between Leonardo DRS and an Israeli company called Rada Electronic Industries, which basically builds the radar that goes into the Elbit Systems Iron Fist active protection systems used by the IDF on its armored vehicles. So, in about a dozen years, he's worked Raytheon's lobbying contract against the
This pace is a little slow.
Pentagon. Then he's, ran the Pentagon at Obama's right hand in his behest.
Yes, we know he's corrupt. Let's just jump forwards.
The minute that you actually understand it. The whole tree above this is owned, in essence, by the Italian government. And I'll explain, because it's like, with Leonardo S.p.A. is the parent. It's basically...
War is definitely good for business.
An aerospace and defense conglomerate that's headquartered in Rome. Okay. The single largest shareholder of that conglomerate is the Italian state itself, which holds over 30.
War is good for business for certain businesses, and peace is good for business for nearly everyone that isn't involved in war.
Percent of stock through its Ministry of Economic and Finance. Now, 30%, I get it. It doesn't sound like, control, right? Until you actually realize Vanguard, which is the biggest shareholder in most of the S&P 500, averages around a 30% block, which runs the company outright in a lot of cases. America knows it. The U.S. subsidiary that filed the signal trace patent used to be called Celex ES Incorporated. And then they, rebranded it to... the storefront that pushes the...
I want to skip. Who is responsible for this, all this shenanigans? It's not as interesting until you actually get into a situation where you're in a position to hold people to account. It's pretty much irrelevant.
Product to your local cops is a Florida outfit that's called Vetted Security Solutions, and its sister brand, which is Odin Risk Solutions. Now, both are owned by Vetted Holdings out of St. Petersburg. The CEO is John Rinker, and Odin basically says on its website that it's rooted in the unparalleled expertise of special operations veterans, and that's because the brand was actually founded by two ex-Special Forces dudes named Danny Diaz.
I'm going to skip to this high traffic section of videos.
So right alongside the Italian state surveillance and the Israeli video analytics from BriefCam. So your local department gets sales calls from a couple of these ex-Special Forces operators in Florida, 3 different countries worth of intelligence-grade surveillance tools, all bundled into the same quote, and zero requirement to actually ask your city council whether or not it's a good idea, which means zero obligation to ask you, and it's being used against you, being weaponized.
Yeah.
So the deployment footprint is already there because, again, Leonardo has been selling the underlying play readers to these same deployments. One thing that
it's already in your town.
I noticed was the Electronic Frontier Foundation's atlas of surveillance documents, and they were in the pipeline that they had by name. Pueblo and Westminster Police in Colorado have run LSAG play readers since 2010 and 2009, both funded in part by the Federal Bureau of Justice Assistance. And the Catalooga County Sheriff's Office in Ohio runs an 80-camera LSAG network spanning 20 Cleveland area agencies, including the Cleveland Division of Police, Cleveland Heights, Lakewood, and Shaker Heights. West Virginia State Police also runs a system that's...
So a lot of places run it.
And the technical defense that Leonardo offers is completely broken. Like, they imply that MAC address randomization protects you. Hey, if it does, why do they even collect it in the first place? Anyways, let's put that to the side. Don't worry about that pesky detail. But essentially, it's because your phone fakes a new identifier every few minutes. That's what they're pointing to say, oh, it doesn't matter. But again, like, it absolutely does. But researchers at places like the United States Naval Academy, specifically guys like Jamie Martin, have published a paper in Proceedings on Privacy Enhancing Technologies in 2021. Now, they documented a flaw in Apple's BLE continuity protocol where the device broadcasts its permanent MAC address inside its advertising packets and, in essence, defeats randomization completely. And the same paper showed that the predictable sequence numbers in those Bluetooth frames let an adversary track an Apple device across days and weeks, even while the random addresses are actually rotated.
Only Bluetooth shutdown.
Weeks, even while the random
only full Bluetooth shutdown in settings stops.
Addresses.
You know what? I never have my Bluetooth on, so they can't use this against me.
Are actually rotating. So even if your iPhone...
What you can actually do, let's see.
The only move that works is really to stop letting them get so many easy wins. Stop making it so easy for them. And a lot of times that's going to require investment, whether it's intellectual or monetary.
I think changing MAC addresses would drop existing connections, yes. But you can just reconnect. And if your phone that's traveling, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, that's how the router identifies you. Changing MAC address would drop some types of connections.
Disassociating.
It depends if you have a secure router or not. If you have a secure router, devices get authenticated, and they get authenticated based on their MAC address. If you have an open MAC router that doesn't have any security on it, it doesn't matter. You can change your MAC address all you want.
With that electronic fingerprint that you would be broadcasting. So For example, your smartwatch stays at home on the days, you're going anywhere that you wouldn't actually want it logged. The phone belongs in a Faraday bag, or, at the absolute minimum, if you're like, I'm not going to buy a Faraday bag. Okay, cool. Then put it in airplane mode with the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi turned off. Which even that's not a real guarantee, but that's a whole nother video. Just keep in mind, like, turning the screen off doesn't actually shut the radios up. Retail anti-theft tags, like, need to come out of the clothes the day you actually bring them home, because most of them still have live UHF transponders that can be read from, like, across a parking lot, generally speaking. Also, things like that little Bluetooth key tracker on your keychain, the one that you got because it was convenient. Like, when you lost your keys, you could easily find it. I would throw that in the trash. It ends up doing more work for the surveillance state than it will ever do for you.
It depends on the person. I know one person that loses her keys like once a week. And the key finder for her might be essential.
That's just what it is. Another thing is obvious is pay cash when you can. Always pay cash if you can. And that's because every kind of contactless tap that you do is just another ping into that same database. This is where we get into the conversation of Monero, which is the obvious default here. I would advise that people use it with Cake Wallet. And that's just really because it's the easiest to install and use for like your average normal present. Now, Leonardo demoed their product in front of a room full of American police chiefs at their annual conference in October of 2023. The people that swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution demoed that to them, and they're like, this is awesome. Oh, you can't make this stuff up. The U.S. Patent Office signed off 5 months after that, in March of 2024. Now, the average inventor waits about 2 years for that same stamp. They waited 5 months. Amazing.
Oh, of course, a politically connected company gets a faster approval time. Yes, that's amazing. Well, how to check your own town? Well, I'm actually going to skip that and show you something else that is interesting. From Zero Hedge. Flock blinks. Surveillance giant slashes data retention after 50 jurisdictions walk. Cams destroyed. So, it's like I said, they're going to try to do something Orwellian. I don't think they're going to make it. Flock Safety, the startup that blanketed America in automated license plates readers, announced Thursday that it is dialing back its expansive platform. The company is significantly shortening its data retention windows, requiring police to justify every search and allowing cities to block neighboring jurisdictions from querying their cameras for immigration enforcement. Ha 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 ha. That's why the deep state doesn't want immigration enforcement. So I was surprised when I saw this article, but now it makes complete sense. This technology, I've said it several times up to now, it would be great for catching illegals, and apparently it is. And so company is completely reworking everything and destroying data itself just to make sure its systems can't be used to track illegals. That's funny. I found out that the person behind this pro-Flock propaganda piece put out by the Free Press is Barry Weiss. This is the same Barry Weiss that suppressed a 60-minute piece on Jeffrey Epstein's banking relationships. It turns out, under Barry's leadership, the story never aired. So, yeah, basically, corrupt person. Let's see. Well, the fact that there's a movement, Get My Flock Out, in full swing. More than 50 agencies and municipalities have canceled, suspended, rejected, or simply unplugged their Flock contracts since January, according to a tracker maintained by DeFlock. Republican members of Congress filed at least 2 bills aimed at severely restricting the systems. However, others haven't waited for legislation. Our Guardian investigation documented 33 destruction incidents across 23 states. Cameras smashed, sawed off their poles, or hauled away entirely. One activist told AFP he has personally disabled roughly 30 devices and post destruction videos to some 500,000 Instagram followers, while Deflock America Face Group has grown past 600,000 members. Yeah, like I said, they're going to try. It's not going to work. And this is the not going to work part here. Fusion centers are now monitoring the surveillance state's opponents. Yeah, they're trying to stop this, but when you have 600,000 people dedicated to shutting all this down, so cities can, then of course there's an angle about so cities can choose not to help ICE catch illegals. That feature exists for a reason. 404 Media found Flock's lookup tools aided in at least 4,000 immigration-related searches between Trump's inauguration and May 2025, including queries run in states that banned local law enforcement from cooperating with ICE. Yes, that's got to sting the Democrats. And so that's one flaw in the system. Now, Trump's using it to go after illegals. Now, it's not only the, let's say, alternative media people like in this video that are against it. Now you have regular Democrats, the radical anti-ISIS that are against this too. Well, in all, it's not hopeless. I think it is being shut down in a lot of places. Yep, I'm worried, but not too worried. Anyway, this will be on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Can watch on Kick or Twitch, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.